So it begins, Dee thought, as he watched the man pass by and wondered whether the computer that was integrated in these glasses was currently recording video. He met Y at a street corner and they headed further down the street together. So, I sent out an application to the CIA today, Y said, as they passed the graffiti-covered wall with the words, "Love me," written on it. "What?" Dee yelled out. "To do what for them?" "Well, probably to analyze data or something." "Data that they get from the NSA? Nah, come on now. I know we're not exactly seeing eye to eye on this, but not everything they do is bad. Tell you what, why don't we make a list of pros and cons? You say the pros, I say the cons. You start." Dee thought it over for a couple of seconds and then said, "Well, they funded abstract artists during the Cold War. That was kind of cool." "See? Alright, my turn. So I guess the fact that they sent prisoners to third countries to have them tortured there wasn't all that good. But I wouldn't be doing things like that," Y said, and looked over to Dee, who gave him a crooked grin and said, "I ran out of pros." "Aw, come on, man," Y pleaded. "I mean, in this messed up world we live in, sometimes things have to get a little muddled. Like, if we want to stop Russia from invading countries, we have to get our hands dirty a little. Force is the only language they understand." They reached the address the mail had told them to go to, and hesitantly rang the bell beside the name Blueprint Health. The door buzzed open and Y and Dee entered and walked up a staircase that led them to a big, bright white room, filled with numerous white desks and white chairs. There were paintings of brains and other internal organs on the walls, and at the other end of the room there were a couple of stools, assembled from 2 screens. A big one, with a slideshow projected onto it, and a small one that displays the face of a bearded man who was apparently addressing the crowd from another part of the country. A very young girl beside a desk asked them if they had paid the entrance fee and looked for their names on a list in front of her. Once she had found them and waved them through, they sat down in front of the screens from which the bearded man was lecturing about cars with muscles in their engines. He went on to talk about rejuvenating biotechnology, claiming most infectious diseases have been easily prevented, for example through sanitation, but age-related diseases have not. Why? Well, first off, what is aging exactly? It's the lifelong accumulation of damage to the body. His solution to the disease of aging was maintenance. It works for simple machines, like cars. So does it also work with a complex machine, like the human body? He began to list damage to the body and ways to fix them, like replacing lost cells with stem cells, or regenerating burned skin through tissue engineering, and showed a chart illustrating the survival rate of mice he had injected with bone marrow stem cells and infected with a disease. After briefly touching on epi-mutations in the brain and regulatory innovation, he ended his speech and asked for questions from the audience. A man in the first row asked about Alzheimer research, and Dee had to think of the various films in which experiments in that field had led to gruesome mutations in the animals the treatments were tested on. Apes, and even sharks that turned into violent killer machines that threatened humanity. A few more questions were answered before another speaker took over the microphone. On the screen behind her, a picture of the Fountain of Youth appeared. It was followed by countless other images as she began to talk about body parts made to order. A bloody piece of organic matter was projected onto the wall when she said, "They have engineered a heart. As you can see, it's actually beating." She continued by listing other advancements in various scientific fields. These people basically grow votes. They work for a big German investor. He's one of those guys who wants to build entire countries on votes. Dee had recently read about large numbers of international businessmen who were supposedly considering to leave their various home countries behind in order to become citizens of floating countries in international waters where the laws, rules and regulations of other nations did not apply. But he could not make up his mind whether these people were serious and how much longer he would have to wait to see something like this actually happening on a larger scale. Because the woman beside the screen just kept on listing more and more baffling stories. In her incredibly confident and upbeat tone, she made a few remarks about creative theft, and while paintings and sketches of Leonardo da Vinci as well as body parts of humans and animals flickered behind her, she said, "Body 1, Leonardo 0, Body 2, Leonardo 0, Body 3, Leonardo 0. She talked about harvesting cells, drug manufacturers, a fashion designer who grows vegetable leather, and then posed the question, why build a house when you can grow a house instead? She briefly touched on the subject of so-called biotic video games. For example, living organisms in confined spaces that would be manipulated with some computer program a couple of biology students had written. Then the woman described a couple of florists who had genetically engineered a living coffin, a fungus that could be wrapped around a dead body instead of a casket. The mushroom would then gradually devour the dead organic mass, she explained, as she pointed at the long, wide weaves of spores on the screen behind her. And you've probably seen this, or heard about it, she went on, and the picture of a mouse, which had a human ear on its back, appeared on the screen. It's a rather iconic image from the late 90s, when scientists genetically altered a lab rat so that it would grow an ear. It was somewhat controversial, Critics were wondering whether they were only doing it because they could, and asking how exactly the mouse benefited from this ear on its back. Then there are these Australian artists who like to pose interesting questions that inspire their works. For example, they ask themselves, if pigs could fly, what would their wings look like? So they grew wings from pig cells. A couple of pink wings appeared behind her, followed by various fuzzy portraits. And then there's this guy who creates pictures with genetically engineered bacteria. She said something about a certain gen space, and many in the audience hastily tried to take notes. Even now, you can print cells at home. The woman raved and then began to talk about the startups of Silicon Valley. Just like these people back then, we should experiment in our garages, not just with computers, but with living matter. But when a woman in the audience raised her hand and asked, so what if someone does not have some fancy degree to get access to a lot of research sites? What if I just want to inject myself with something? Do you have any tips for people like me? The speaker replied, well, I wouldn't recommend injecting yourself with anything. I could tell you stories about teeth growing where they're not supposed to grow. Gasps of disgust could be heard, and Dee couldn't help picturing the bizarre disfigurement before his inner eye either. After a few more questions, the presentations were over, and the socializing began. While Y jumped into the crowd in order to make some vital connections, Dee wandered around the premises. When he joined Y again, he was just talking with the woman who had asked about injecting herself with something earlier. As they left the building together, she said, I'm still gonna do it. I mean, we know the Chinese are doing it. We have to keep up. They parted ways, and Dee watched her walk down a dark alley, wondering whether she would become an actual superhuman being soon. Wondering whether she would guard or torment the streets of this city. Like so many comic books and movies had prophesied. Thank you, thank you. I'm all out of poetry, sorry.
Give it for Joey, everybody, on guitar as well. Joey's. And give it a Dan, everybody. Once again, thanks very much for coming out tonight. We are back next week with the regular Chandelier sessions, so come back down next week and enjoy some live music. Thanks very much again for everyone that came, and enjoy the rest of your life. Thanks very much.